Right, time to introduce our guest today. I have with me artist, musician, documentary filmmaker, and the producer of the website thecrowhouse.com. Wealth of information. If you've never been there, go to our Facebook page. You'll see a link to get there. It is my pleasure to welcome all the way from Australia, Mr. Max Igan. Hello, Max.
How are you, Paul? Nice to be on the show.
Thank you for taking time out to spend it with us today. I call you my Saturday afternoon sanity, because I get to listen to your radio show through YouTube on Saturday afternoons, and it really is the voice of reason in a world of madness.
Well, it is certainly a world of madness, Paul, and that's what I try to do with the show, at least try to remain calm in the midst of all of this. I mean, I think it's important to look at things a little bit objectively and try to remain calm about it. And we do face a lot of problems, but I see them all as opportunities, and I think it's important for people to realise that.
Me too, actually. I remember the start of my journey really is only just under 5 years ago. I think most people who have got this far, if you see what I mean, have always sort of asked the right questions but never got the right answers. And I remember thinking early on that this sort of feels like a challenge. It feels like we've been upgraded not for our benefit, unfortunately. It feels like the system wants to upgrade and become more efficient. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Well, that's what it does. I mean, all the processes that we see are all processes of efficiency, all of it. See, what we're really facing, the new world order that everyone's afraid of, it's basically a global corporation. What we're facing is corporatism. That's what it is. And the way corporatism works, the way any business structure works, it works to make itself more efficient. So it's the system itself that's the problem. That's what I've tried to convey to people on the shows and in the films. I mean, people are out there pointing the finger at these guys and those guys, and all of these things are simply symptoms, and they're strands of the web, but they're not looking at what makes up the web. And the web is the system itself. And it's very, very clever, because once it's put in place, the type of system that it is, once it's put in place, it works to make itself more efficient. And in that process, it makes humanity more expendable along the way. So that's what's happening. And eventually, within the parameters of this system, what we will see is a global corporation, and there'll be just enough people left on the planet that are required to run the corporation smoothly. That's what it's all about. You know, and the corporation will be used to extract all the resources from the planet. That's basically what's going on. And it's important that people step back and look at this and really see what we're facing here. And it's very tricky when people start pointing the finger and start wanting to blame certain people for it, because ultimately the problem is ourselves. It's our compliance with the system, because we don't understand how it works. We don't step back and look at it, and we're taught to always attack just strands and webs, strands of the web, and we never address the actual problem. So that's what I've tried to do with the show, and that's what people need to see, that the problem is the system itself, and the solution is our non-compliance to the system. And we need, all of my shows I talk about community, common unity, put common unity back in community, because that's what we need. Once we've got that mutual respect for each other, we simply stand up and turn away from the system, because it's just fiction. That's the thing. And if you're fighting it, you're fighting a ghost. It only exists on paper. All you're doing is fighting one strand of the web. What you've got to do is not comply with the system, but you need the support of your community to do it. So that's where the solution lies.
Yeah, I mean, truth and numbers is the two words that I try and put together. I mean, we know we have the truth now. There is so much evidence out there. I mean, it's now difficult for anyone to deny that the system exists. But it's the numbers, and it's the remarkable ignorance of you show the obvious truth to the public, but still, what is that programming? What is it that stops them being able to open their minds up and say, now let me have a look at that again?
Well, the thing is, you're challenging their entire perspective of life. People go through life, they get to 30 or 40 or 50 years old, and you're telling them that everything they thought was real about the world is actually false. And it's a big challenge for people. And that's the paradigm that you have to break, and it's very, very difficult to break that paradigm. And that's what we really need to be focused on, is how to explain the basic, simple truth to people, because really that's all people need to discover. All people need to find out is themselves. They need to find out that they're free. They need to realize that they're free, because Everything about this system is designed to curtail the human experience and replace the human experience with commerce, superimpose commerce over the human experience. You've got to pay for everything you do. It's all based on how much money you've got, what you can afford to do. That controls where you can afford to live, where you can afford to go, what you can afford to eat, all of this sort of stuff. Why do you have to pay to be alive? Why aren't you free? All other animals are free. Why aren't we free? Why haven't we got a system? I mean, I can appreciate that we need something to perform trade with, but why haven't we got a system in which humanity is free? I mean, if humanity created this system to service our needs, why are we so tightly controlled by the system, and why aren't we free? Why are we the most expendable thing within the parameters of the system? Humanity will be cast off and expendable all the time as long as it supports the economic model, as long as the bottom line works. So people just need to step back and look at it and think about it, you know. I mean, we're the highest of the food chain. We're the most intelligent life, supposedly, on this planet. And we created this whole system, and all the problems that we face in the world, they all come from us. We can blame whoever we want, but ultimately it comes from our support of the system, regardless of what the problem is. It's all to do with the system. The problems are created by people who work within the system. So it's all to do with the system, and the people work within the system because they don't know that they're free. So it's just attempting to explain to people that they're actually free. You know, why would you think that you're not free? It's a really, really difficult paradigm for people. See, people have forgotten what their relationship with government is. That's the problem. People have been taught to believe over the last couple of 100 years, 120, 150 years, that the government is the ruler of the people. But actually they're public trustees. They're people that we elect and put in place to manage our infrastructure for us. We are the nation. We are the ones who own the country. We are the ones who own all the resources. We own everything in the country. We are the country. The people of Australia are the country of Australia. The people of England are the country of England. The people of the United States, the citizens, these make up the nation. The government are public trustees, and we've forgotten that. And we're not holding these governments accountable for the breaches of trust that they're performing, because they're doing it all the time. I mean, if anybody in your country is in a state of hardship, then the government's in breach of trust, because no one should be in a state of hardship. We elect a government to ensure that we're looked after. That's what we put them there for. They're our employees. So they've turned it all around, you see. They've turned everything upside down, and people now live in fear of their government. And, you know, legislation, all this stuff, these people get in power, they write rules on pieces of paper, and they dare to call it law, and they use it to take away the natural rights of the people, simply because we let them. And again, we let them because we're in divided communities. We don't have the strength of the community with us. One of us tries to stand up and say something about this, and we get attacked by the authorities, we get attacked by the newspapers, we get vilified by the press. Everyone calls us a nut or a conspiracy theorist or a rebel or whatever, you know, because we don't have that common unity in our community. All the rest of the community buys it. They just believe what the media tells them, because we've got barriers between ourselves. We're taught to have barriers between ourselves. We're taught that life is all about segregation. It's all about social standing, the one with the most wins, and it's what you wear and how you dress and what you look like and all this stuff and all these yardsticks they give us to measure ourselves up to, which all serve to divide the community. And there's the problem right there. You know, so I've been saying on the shows that what we need to do is realize the beauty and the validity of yourself, and realize that exists in everybody else. You know, and if your perspective of reality serves to invalidate someone else's perspective of reality, then how valid is your perspective? You know, everybody's valid. Everybody's worthy. Everybody's the same as everybody else. Everybody sees reality from a different perspective. That's the only thing that's really different about anybody. And everybody's perfect, exactly how they are, because they're here to experience themselves. You know, no one can be Paul Vickers better than you can. So why would you see anyone as being a threat to you? Why would you see yourself as being anything but perfect? Because you're Paul Vickers. That's what you came here to experience, obviously, because that's who you are. You know what I mean? So we've got this really, really twisted perspective of reality and what our relationship to reality is and what our relationship to the people around us is, and it serves to keep us divided. And it's just divide and conquer, you know. It's like soup out here. It's like vegetable soup walking through your neighbourhood. You don't know what's going on. There's just stuff going on everywhere. Everyone's segregated, locked away in their little homes, fences around each other. Don't want to talk to the neighbours, judging these people, judging those people, race, colour, creed, whatever, anything they can give us to divide us. That's the problem, you see. So we need to get respect for each other back, Because once we've got that respect, what's going on is obvious. And if you've got respect for yourself and respect for other people, well, you're not going to put up with this. And if you've got a thriving community, well, you've got the strength of the community. You just simply stand up and say, no, we won't do this. We've remembered that you guys are actually public trustees, and we're going to hold you in breach of trust. If you think we've broken some of your legislation, well, that's interesting. That's fine. We'll get to that later. But let's first examine the trust agreement, which is the basis of my entire relationship with you people. And let's see if you're actually living up to your end of the bargain. And I've got the community here standing with me, and we'd all like to look into this because you're public trustees. That's what you are. And, you know, that's the attitude we need to have, but we need the strength of the community to do it.
I absolutely agree. I mean, I've always said, or not always, but I've said, over the past 2 or 3 years, we've got to get involved at the lower levels. We've got to start attending our council meetings and get involved. We have to question the decisions, ask for the budgets, generally ask the right questions, but we've got to be doing it in big enough numbers. I actually live in North Yorkshire in the UK, and I dare to say it feels like it might be the most sleepy place in the country. The depression that is obvious to everybody hasn't really hit North Yorkshire as badly as elsewhere, and thereby everybody they don't quite feel, you know, the seriousness of where we are right now. I wonder if we could perhaps talk about a deeper a reality of how they create reality. For me, it's the old having the family round for coffee and getting your family albums out, and you get your pictures out and you attach a story to each picture. And the TV does that, and the media does that, the artists do that, except they ask you to attach your own story to pictures. It's all showing in pictures for me, and that's how they create reality. Does that make sense?
Well, it sort of does, yeah. I mean, they create reality through controlling people's minds, basically. I mean, someone once said that the real power, excuse me, real power is the ability to define reality and to have other people respond to your definition as if it were their own. Okay? So that's what they've kind of done. They've superimposed their reality over the consciousness of the people. They've done it through television, all the pictures on television, everything's larger than life on television, all the fashion, all this sort of stuff. They give you an image of what you're supposed to look like, an image of what your hair's supposed to look like, what you're supposed to wear, where you're supposed to go, what you're supposed to eat, you know? And so we've basically had this completely false reality superimposed over the human consciousness. And we're always looking for our salvation in sources that are external to ourselves. You know, we've forgotten who and what we are. That's the main problem. That's the only reason that this whole system is able to do what it does. Because the people are so disempowered, because of the images and the yardsticks they're given to measure themselves up to, and the fact that they've forgotten who and what they are. But as far as thinking in pictures, I mean, you're talking about that's the way you think when you think about things, because that's just very right brain to think in pictures. I actually think in pictures. Most people think in language, but so I think in pictures.
I was just sort of likening, for me, it's they show us their pictures and attach a story to it. It's not me seeing the pictures any more so than anybody else. It's just that we're all showing each other, and we use words to do it, to paint pictures, if we don't actually have the physical picture itself. I see words as, the language is something that I'm very interested in, and I suppose that's really what I concentrate more on than anything else. Decoding the words and just wondering, because the words that we're speaking today, the English language that we're using, in its current form is actually less than 300 years old. And it is my belief that this language has been designed to do what it's doing to us now. We're talking ourselves into enslavement.
Well, a lot of the time we are. I mean, and also with the English language, you're very, very disconnected from reality using the English language. There's so many words that have been taken out. And the subtext, even within the words and structure of the words in the English language, like even saying you're an individual. You know, you break it down, it's in, divide, you all. You know?
Oh, I sort of see that as an internal divided duality.
Well, absolutely. See, like when you go to school, the first thing they teach you to do is to spell. And what are you doing when you're spelling? You're casting spells.
Yep.
You know, so a lot of people think in language, and so they're thinking in words, and their whole understanding of reality is based on their understanding of the language. And a lot of modern kids don't even understand the language properly because they've really taken a lot of the grammar and stuff out of the schools. Like they don't teach trivium in school anymore. You know, trivium or quadrivium in school. No, grammar, logic, and rhetoric. All this sort of stuff. So a lot of the kids don't even understand the words. And you're spelling, you're creating a reality by spelling, like saying I'm an individual human being, okay? You're in divide you all, and you are a being that is the hue of man, you know, a human being. So you're spelling a reality.
Yep.
You're not man, you're not in your power. You're not an individual, you are unique. You know what I mean? You might be individual in some sense, but you're more unique than anything else. There's nobody else like you. No one else that will have your perspective. No one else that will be exactly the same as you. No one else that will ever feel exactly the same as you or understand things exactly the way you do. You know, it might get close, but it'll never be exactly the same because no one else can be you, because you are completely and utterly unique. But we're not taught to treasure our uniqueness and treasure the uniqueness of other people. We're taught that I'm an individual. I'm strong. I'm individual. I'm in divide you all. I'm divided from everybody. You know, I mean, it's fine to be an individual, but you are saying that you're divided. You're spelling that reality for yourself, even by using those words. And that's the way the English language is designed. And there's so many words that have been taken out, like very deep spiritual meanings. It's very difficult to convey deep spiritual meanings to people in English. It's a very mechanical language. If you listen to other languages such as Italian, you find that they flow. Italian almost sounds like one word when someone's speaking Italian. There's no pauses between the words. There's little joining syllables and little joining words that are used to structure the sentences. And the language conveys a lot more emotion than English. English is very stop-start. All the words start and stop and they finish. The words don't run together. They're all separate. You know, so it's a very, very mechanical language, and it's very, very constructed, I believe, to disconnect us even more from reality, to keep us locked in our left brain. I think that's what the whole Shakespearean Revolution was about. I think the whole Shakespearean Revolution was actually constructed by the Bacon Society, and Francis Bacon I would actually call the true father of America, because everything that Francis Bacon said about his new Atlantis and all of this sort of stuff, this is what we see in America today. And I think that America was basically founded on the principles of Francis Bacon, and I think that's who constructed the whole other works of Shakespeare. I don't think they were done by an unemployed playwright at all. I think they were done by the Bacon Society, written by several people.
Well, there is plenty of evidence out there that 47 clerics sat down in the 1600s and basically rewrote what we now know as the King James Bible. And there's lots of evidence from 1350 onwards that the elites were arguing about the new language that was to be created. Again, this is all just research you can find on the internet. But it does fit in with what you've just said, that this language is designed to divide us. I believe a spell is not a number of words. For me, a word is a number of spells. My poor command of the language is very frustrating for me. It means that I have to say things more than once using words that aren't powerful enough. And through reading books, I am hopefully improving, but it is frustrating when you cannot get out what you want to say first time round. So you keep saying it again and again and again, and that weakens its power.
Well, you know, sometimes you have to do that as well. I mean, even with the radio shows, if you listen to my radio shows, very often I talk about the same thing. I just do it from a different perspective, because people see things from different perspectives, and they see things in different ways. And even though I've said this before, well, if I say it again from this perspective, maybe someone else will understand it, and they'll get it this time. They didn't get it from the other perspective. So I just repeat myself and try to get the message across, and eventually the message becomes more and more concise. And so it is good in a way to do that, because they become more and more concise. And if the truth can be said in a simple enough way that people can understand it, if you can just nail it in a sentence and tell people what's going on, they will understand it and they will get it. People will wake up if they can be presented with the truth in a manageable way, in a way that they can understand, and a way that just resonates with them, you know, basic and simple truth. And that's why a lot of people say the shows resonate with them so much, because that's really all I'm doing on the shows. I'm just offering basic, simple truths. That's all it is. I mean, the world's messed up, and here's why it is. It's this system, and it's our response to the system, and and when we try to attack the system, we're working within the parameters that the system provides for us. And that's not going to work. You know,
I know.
They create this legal system, and so you've got to work within this legal system. Well, hang on a minute. You know, that's the legal system that created this system, which is the problem. So let's take it back to trust, and let's look at the trust agreement, which is what the relationship between people and government actually is. And once we work out what's going on with this trust agreement, because I don't think anybody in this country should be in a state of hardship. I don't think anybody in this country should be having any of the difficulty that they are. I don't think anyone here should be losing their property and losing their farms, and there shouldn't be fracking going on, destroying the water table. All of these things indicate a breach of trust, because this is not what we employ you to do. That's the whole thing. So you've got to bring it all back to that. And it all comes down to people shifting their paradigm, people understanding what reality is. And this is what's been taken away from us. See, even in the book 1984, they took away so many words from the language that people didn't understand themselves anymore. They didn't know how to rebel anymore. You know, they took all the words for rebellion and freedom out of the language in the book 1984. So people knew they wanted freedom, but they didn't know what freedom was. They didn't know how to express it. And that's the way we are with spirituality and our understanding and our relationship to the world. Because we've had our language so compacted and so constructed, it's removed any real connection that we can display for ourselves in the language. I mean, foreign people, Italian people, French people, people who speak other tongues are very, very emotional people, and they've got different love that they can openly express for different members of their family, different relationships that they have. All we have in our language is love. Okay, I love you, but I better not say that to a boy because they might think I'm gay. You know what I mean? But it might be your friend who you really love. So there's no way of saying that word in a way that it applies to your friend. There's only that one word. You can't differentiate between the love you feel for your friend or your cat or your dog or your mother or your father or your wife or anyone. It's just that one word. But in these other languages, there's all of these emotional connections to people and to reality and to everything else. So we've had all of that taken away from us, and it's really, really important that people realise this. But the trick is, though, I mean, how do you get them to realise it? How do you shift that paradigm in people? How do you get people to understand that they're actually free and to question why they have to pay to be alive, why they are forced to run on the treadmill all the time in order to buy all this stuff that they tell you to buy? I mean, it's ridiculous. You know, we've got to try to find a way of cracking that paradigm in people and shifting that paradigm in people, just getting people to look at reality, look at life, and look at the planet from a slightly different perspective from what they're told. But, you know, they've kept on the treadmill, very, very hard to do because they're just caught up. They're running around. They've got to collect paper. They've got bills, haven't got time, can't listen. You know, and you get to the stage where they're really old and they sit back and they think, well, wow, what was that all about? You know, so unique time in history, Paul, that we're in at the moment. I think people are waking up and they're waking up to how the system works, and so this really is the first time in history we've had a chance for real freedom, because all the revolutions we've had in the past, it's got to the stage where the people were repressed and they revolted and instituted new government. But they were never spiritually evolved. They never really knew what the system was. They never really knew what the problem was. They just knew that there was a tyrant running things and they needed to depose him and put some...
Oh, your mic's gone, Max. You said your mic might disappear, so I'm telling you that you... Okay, welcome back then. We've still got on the line with us, and a pleasure to have him with us today, Mr. Max Igan in Australia. Thanks for staying with us, Max. Let's talk about what we've discovered so far and why this time in history is unique to any other time.
Well, it's unique because it's the first time we've had a chance at real freedom. It's the first time we've ever really had the bones of the mechanism that controls us laid bare for all to see. We've had revolutions in the past in our history, but it's because people have always been so repressed and suppressed and have just revolted and replaced one tyrant with another. They've never really known that they were free themselves, and they've never stood in the power of themselves. And people are becoming aware of this power now. And so this is the first time in history that we've got a real chance at freedom. And sure, we're facing a lot of bad stuff, but I see all of it as opportunity. I mean, it has to get bad in order for people to wake up. Otherwise, they're never going to see it. You can tell your neighbours about what's going on as much as you like, but they'll never see it until they realise it for themselves. And they'll wake up when they're due to wake up, if they wake up. But it's not going to happen until it affects them on a personal level, until it gets in their face. And so the more the system makes itself more efficient, and the more the system becomes apparent and visible, the more people will wake up by default. And that's just the way it goes. But it is the first time in history that we've been spiritually evolved enough to actually deal with freedom, because we've never really been free. In the whole human experience, we've never been free. We've been given freedom of choice, and we've thought that indicates freedom, but it isn't. We're not free to be ourselves and be all that we can be. We're not free to serve creation and to create a reality that could be wonderful, and work and live and do things to the best of our potential. We're kept dumbed down. We're trained about what reality is. We're given yardsticks to measure ourselves up to. We're kept on a treadmill of debt, made to pay to be alive. There is no freedom in the world. But now we know that. This is the first time in history we've ever really been able to step back and look at it. And there's enough people around now that are talking about it and that are showing people that they are free. And so this is a real opportunity. And that's what's so important about 2012, I think. I think it's a tipping point this year. I think that there's so much going on that are things that have been put in place to lock humanity down. But as I said, it's because this is happening, it's becoming more and more visible, and it's causing more and more people to wake up. So I think this will be a very, very important time in history.
I'm certainly looking forward to seeing where we are at the end of the year. There are plenty of people forecasting waves of trouble, a tidal wave of trouble coming our way. I don't really support that. It's not that I don't believe it, it's just that I can't believe it because the system appears to be working really, really well. It is coming up against a little bit of opposition now, but maybe not in the way that perhaps I would hope. I think that to try and use their tools against them is very difficult, but there is one thing that I think we could do, and I actually sort of spoke about this last week, and the banking system. I mean, the banking system is the culprit. The debt-based servitude that we sort of give to the banks is, for me, the primary problem. We don't have access to honest money. And I did put forward an idea last week that I've not heard anybody else put forward, and that was an asset-based bank, which would work exactly the same exactly the same way as banks do now. But Mr. and Mrs. Smith, for example, with a fully paid-up house, could pop down to this asset bank, bank it, and through today's normal regulations and rules, we wouldn't have to ask. Mr. and Mrs. Smith can bank their asset and generate a mortgage for little Tommy, who's their grandson, and it could be interest-free. And just a small monthly management payment would do the job. I mean, I put that forward last week, and I don't think many people have picked up on how easy and how straightforward that could be if we wanted it to be so.
Yeah, well, there's all sorts of things we could do rather than what we do now. The trick is with money is for people to realise where it actually comes from, the money that we pass around to each other. We create it ourselves. No bank ever lent anybody anything. The people create the money themselves. The bank just makes the people use their paper.
Yep.
And because you're using their paper, they make you pay all the money back to them. Plus, they charge you interest for using their paper.
If you buy a house...
You actually got to pay back more than you created, but you're the one who creates the money. People are where value comes from. We create value. We create things with value. The whole monetary system is so bizarre and so convoluted. It's very, very difficult for people to get their heads around. But it's something that we take for granted, but it's something that we use every day. We all need money in order to survive, but nobody ever questions where it actually comes from. And it's amazing when you start looking into where it actually comes from. Now, I'd like to see a society where we didn't even need money, something like a Vedic society, but I think that would be a big transition. It would take probably a few generations to get back to something like that. But anything would be better than what we've got. I like the concept of Mike Montaigne's mathematically perfected economy. I think that would work. It's very difficult for me to get my head around, but he did. I had him on the show a couple of years ago, and he talked about it, and it made sense at the time when he told me about it, how everything would remain balanced, everything would be naturally paid off, and it was really, really clever the way he put it all together. And he's been offering that to presidents for years, but nobody will take it up. See, the money system and the whole concept of replacing the human experience with commerce, the fact that you need money to be alive. You should have money, something that we can use to perform commerce if we want to buy and trade with each other, but your life experience shouldn't be reduced to commerce. We put a dollar value on everything. And when there's damage, when there's a fire, when there's a flood, when there's a hurricane, when there's anything, the environment, anything, carbon, whatever. It's always a dollar value. We put a dollar value on everything. So the entire experience of this reality is based in commerce. And we live within a system that demands permanent growth. So in order to have permanent growth within a system of commerce, well, you can't really make anything to last because you've got to keep making stuff so you've got permanent growth. So this system will result in the destruction of the planet, all life on the planet, and the complete depletion of all resources on the planet in order to support this economic model. That's the problem with this system. So anything would be better than this system, you know.
Wouldn't it just?
Well, it would, but that's the problem, see, because the whole human experience has been reduced to commerce. We've got our whole life experience, all of our society, everything, it's all reduced to commerce. All the food on your table, everything, you've got to pay for it all. You've got to pay for the basic necessities of life or else you die. That is not the way it should be. And it's because it's, you know, this money has been given inherent value, you know what I'm saying? You pick up a note, a piece of money, a $50 bill, £5 note, and you believe that this thing has inherent value, but it doesn't. It's just a piece of paper. If you put it next to an apple, the apple's got more value than the piece of paper because you can eat the apple. The apple has inherent value, intrinsic value, because it's an apple, you know, just by being there. But the paper doesn't. The paper takes the value from the apple and transfers it to the paper, and then you need this paper. Take the intrinsic value off money. Just make it monopoly money that we can pick up $200 when we pass go every week, and we can use that to perform commerce with each other and trade around the town and to pick up stuff, you know, and do stuff with it.
Absolutely.
But take the intrinsic value off money. We don't need it. All we need is something that's a system of trade. Give value to anything. It doesn't matter what it is. Could be shells, could be bootlaces, pieces of paper with government stamps on it. Fine, that works. Whatever. But take the intrinsic value off the money. There's the problem.
I've been saying this for a long time. We can use anything. We really could buy a game of Monopoly, take the money out, and because we've initially paid for the game of Monopoly, we could actually trade with it. I mean, it is that simple. I agree with you entirely, and I can see why the apple is more valuable than the £5 note, because the apple is free. The apple originates from a free source, and I agree, food should be free. I mean, how we've come to the point of paying somebody else to make it for us, and then let's look at what they're making for us. This control system is verging on psychopathic, in my opinion. And if when you can see where a road's going, you mustn't be surprised if you finally get there. And where I see this road going is, it's jolly bad for us, and the psychopaths. Well, I don't know if they'll survive it either.
Well, it's a psychopathic system. I mean, it's a system that's been created by psychopaths, and so it is a psychopathic system, and you just got to look at it. That's the only reason why humanity is so expendable. You know, it isn't just that the apple is free, that it has value. It has value because it's an apple. It's the same as a piece of wood has value because it's a piece of wood. You can build something out of it, a chair or a stool or whatever you wanted to build out of this piece of wood. But you can't do anything with a piece of paper. You can write something on it. You can light a fire with it, you know. But it has no intrinsic value. It's just a piece of paper. The apple can feed and sustain you. You know, a potato can feed and sustain you. All of this stuff has intrinsic value simply by its existence, but the money doesn't. All the money does is steal the intrinsic value of other items and transfer it to the money. And the money places you in a state of scarcity because you can't have all of the items that are around you that are there naturally occurring in your life. Everything nature provides for you for free, you can't have any of it because you don't have this paper. So you've got to spend your life running around collecting paper in order to have everything that the paper deprives you of having by its existence, because it takes the intrinsic value off everything else and transfers it to itself. That's how money works. It's ridiculous, and we don't need this stuff at all, I don't think.
Well, we do need some method of trading, but I agree that it could be anything. It could be anything. All we have to do is attach value to it, and if it's freely available, then yeah, I agree we can trade on that basis. I remember the first time I actually heard your voice, and it was on a 27-minute video, possibly one of the first ones that you actually made, and I can't quite remember the name of it now. But it was a fantastic video about the history, the slavery, and the fact that we are the money and we are the slaves. And that's the DVD that I've been copying and copying and copying, I hope you don't mind, and giving out to as many people as possible. Would you suggest that, you know, this is perhaps what we should be doing?
Well, giving information out to people absolutely is what you should be doing. But again, it's finding the right information to do it. That's just why I've done so many radio shows when I've touched the same topic so many different ways, hoping that one day I'll do a show and people will go, yeah, that's it, that's the one. I can play this to my neighbours and this will wake them up. I've had a lot of success with doing it this way. I've had a lot of people write to me and say, yes, I've used your shows and it's woken up the neighbours, it's woken up my parents. And so, again, we've got to find a way of saying things in a concise enough manner. But money is the glue, the catalyst that holds the whole system together. It keeps people on the treadmill. It keeps people in a state of scarcity because the money is based on interest-bearing debt. And the whole banking system just steals what we create and then charges us interest for doing so. This keeps us running on the treadmill. And it drives the prices of everything up, so everything becomes more and more expensive. The more people wake up, the more expensive everything gets, so the faster people have to run on the treadmill. So they don't get time to really look around them. So that's the catalyst that holds it all together. But really, what we need is for people to simply, I'd like the world to just stop for 5 minutes. I feel like sometimes if I could just stand up there on a soapbox and say, hey, everybody, just stop. Just give me 5 minutes of your time. Just think about what you're doing for a minute, we could change it. If people just had time to stop and think about it and look around and realize what's going on here. It's difficult to crack that paradigm, but, well, that's what we have to do. That's what I tried to do with that film, too. I think the one that you're talking about is called Fight the New World Order, Global Non-Compliance.
That's the one, yeah.
And I made that film very quick, at 27 minutes, and I actually edited out all the places where I took a breath so that it was very, very quick, and people would have had to have played the film 2 or 3 times in order to get all the information because there was no pauses in it. It was just 27 minutes of information, constant talking, and they'd be going, what did he just say? And then I'm on to the next topic. So they never really get time to think about it. So they have to go back and watch it a few times, and hopefully after they've watched it a few times, it's indelibly imprinted into their brain and they're starting to understand what's going on here.
Well,
and that's why I made the film that way.
It's certainly been the most popular one for, well, not popular, but it's the one that's got the most popular response. But it hasn't quite woken them up, but it has sort of given them a bit of a shake, if you see what I mean. Let's slightly change topics because within our interview, I want to try and get to the future, and I want to try and get to, because looking at the past is okay. You've got to understand the past, although history and mystery don't sound the same by mistake, in my opinion. I mean, we can certainly look back and say how much of that can be true, because most of what we know today isn't. The victors write the history, so let's just imagine that it might be true. But let's look forward a little bit, because we can't change what's gone, but we can change what's coming. And I think a lot of people who are waking up are putting too much attention to detail. That it's detail upon detail upon detail to find it's a whodunit with no real conclusion, because you can't ever know the truth for sure. That's the one thing I think that makes the truth seekers. A truth seeker will admit, I think, that you're only 99% sure it's true. The other 1% says, I wish it wasn't.
Well, it's like that as well. And for a lot of people, it's like reading a spy novel. You find out that the world is not the way you thought it was, and at first it comes as a big shock, and then it becomes quite exciting. And you want to look down all these rabbit holes. You want to find out what's going on. You want someone to point the finger at. But ultimately, you can go down any rabbit hole you want, and you'll never really find out what's going on. The ultimate truth that you're looking for is yourself. I've been down all these rabbit holes. We could do a show and we could point the finger at the Zionists and present enough information to say this is a whole Zionist conspiracy. You can do the same thing for the Vatican. Do the same thing for the Jesuits. The same thing for the Rothschilds. You do the same thing for any rabbit hole you want to go down. You can provide enough information to create a credible case to say that this is the root cause of the problem. But ultimately, the root cause of the problem is our response to the system itself. The problem is the system, because the system makes itself more efficient, regardless of all the organizations, the Freemasons, the Zionists, all these people within it that are working to do it. The problem is the system itself, and it's our compliance with the system. So ultimately, once you've done all the searching, what you find is yourself, and you realize that that's what you were looking for. That is the biggest truth that you'll ever find, is yourself and the power that exists within yourself. And once you discover that power, and you can see that power in the people around you, and see the people around you as being as valid as you are, then the whole system changes. We can change the world in 3 seconds once we realize who and what we are, and then who they are will become apparent by default. We won't have to research, we won't have to speculate. And that's the thing. See, people get caught up in the research. They get caught up in going down the rabbit holes and looking for someone to point the finger at. They're not in the now. They're not seeing what's going on around them. The world is changing around them because they are going down these rabbit holes, and they're not applying themselves to where they are, which is now. You know, so that's what people need to do. They need to see the power that they have, because that is the highest harmonic in the whole lot. When you really start going through and looking at it, that's what you discover ultimately is yourself. And once you've discovered yourself, that's when you can start making a real difference. So that's where we need to look. And it's very exciting to look down all these things and see what's going on. Wonderful stuff, you know. It's better than watching a Batman movie. But ultimately it's a rabbit hole that leads nowhere. It'll lead you back to yourself eventually. And I want answers to the questions as well. We all want answers to the questions. We all want to know who to point the finger at. But why do you want to point the finger at them as well? I mean, do you want to hurt them? Do you want to punish them? I don't want to hurt them or punish them. I don't care what they did. I only care what we do from this point forward. If they did bad stuff, well, that's because they're disconnected. That's because they don't understand how reality works. That's because they're probably deeply rooted within the parameters of a psychopathic system, the same as us all. And, you know, there are a lot of psychopaths in our society that control a lot of big things these days. You know, that's one of the things that happened to our societies I think it happened actually way back in the Cataclysm when we lost all our shaman and psychopaths started to weed their way through, because psychopaths recognize other psychopaths and they elevate themselves to positions of authority, and so you've got basically a psychopathic system. I mean, it has to be a psychopathic system, otherwise it wouldn't show so much support for the bottom line at the expense of the people. It would support the people and not the economic model. You know, the whole way the economic model has to function in a state of permanent growth is psychopathic, because it can only do so at the expense of the planet, at the expense of the people. So you can't deny that this is what our society is. You know, but again, you don't want to blame these people. I don't blame them. You know, I think that the real problem is our compliance with the system, our failure to see that the system's there. And this, again, stems from our failure to see the power that we've got within ourselves. So, to me, that's where the solution lies. It's in self-empowerment. Self-empowerment and community. Put common unity back in community and know who and what you are. That's the key to the whole thing for me.
Okay, let's look at what should be, should we be considering? I mean, I think some of us know what the system has planned for us, and it is the ultimate upgrade. It's to take the human out of humanity. And watching your latest transformation, and that's spelled TRANCE, transformation. Watching your latest documentary drama type information. How, in your words, is the system going to upgrade us?
Well, through transhumanism, the transhumanist agenda. This is what is going on all around people. The whole world is being genetically modified, and people just aren't paying attention. This is happening through the GM food, through the chemtrails, through the electromagnetic radiation that we're all being bombarded with, Monsanto, the satellite grids, all of this stuff. It all ties together, and what we're seeing is the genetic modification of all life on the planet. If you start looking into Morgellons syndrome and things like this, and what's actually in the chemtrails, this is quite interesting. You're finding that this is nanoparticulates and all sorts of stuff like that. This is, again, this will tie in with smart meters, because everything you experience is electromagnetic. So they're putting this electromagnetic grid together, and they're putting basically nanotechnology in everything. And of course, this nanotechnology will be able to be controlled through electromagnetism. They've done recent tests. I've got a link on the Crow House where they actually switched mice genes on and off by putting nanoparticulates, injecting a serum into the mice that had nanoparticulates in the serum, and then they used an electromagnetic frequency to switch to control these nanoparticulates, and these nanoparticulates were used to switch the genes on and off in the mouse. This is pretty sophisticated, switching genes on and off with nanoparticulates via means of electromagnetic signals. This is what they're doing in laboratories now, so you can see where this is going. And when you realise that these nanoparticulates are in everything now, well, this is what's happening. The upgrading of the human race. Well, the upgrading or downgrading, depending on what you call an upgrade. Because an upgrade, of course, depends on who controls the upgrade. What is what is good for one person may not be so good for another person. So the human race is being, the evolution of the human race is being controlled, or it's being manipulated by the powers that be. It's happening right under the noses of the people, and I think that we should pay attention again. And that's what I tried to do with the film, is just show people a little bit about what's going on with that. I mean, try to break it to them gently, but it's kind of difficult. How do you break this information to someone gently, But they tell us what they're doing as well. I mean, films like Transcendent Man, Ray Kurzweil, and if you really start looking at where the science is going, and you've got to look at all of the things, like Monsanto and the chemtrails of Fukushima. All of these things, they don't make a lot of sense when taken individually. But when you put them all together and you look at them from a transhumanist perspective, then you can see what's going on. The penny drops, and you can see exactly what's going on. I said in a film that I made back in 2009 called The Awakening that there are certain forces at work on this planet that are attempting to control the evolution of consciousness that is currently happening, because consciousness is evolving. I mean, people are waking up. We wouldn't be having this conversation or doing a radio show like this if consciousness wasn't evolving. And when consciousness evolves, the species evolves as well. Of course it does. But it's not Darwinian. Darwinian evolution doesn't make sense at all. The evolution of the species, I believe, involves an evolution of consciousness. And we're at a time when this is happening. And so that's why we're seeing this huge grid being put in place. We're seeing all of this transhumanism coming out, all of this stuff going on. They're attempting to kind of catch the wave. The wave that's coming, the consciousness evolution that's happening. They're trying to catch that and manipulate it and channel it down into a direction where they'd like to take it down. And that's what appears to be happening anyway, according to my research.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with the fact that they're aware that the game is up in one sense. So rather than deny the game, they're trying to co-opt it and engineer it. I agree entirely with that. I've been saying that for some time. The fact that we're aware and we can do this radio show, and I think radio stations like this are the way forward, although I wish more of them would work together and perhaps network a little better, because it's okay, lots of little stations doing it in their own method, but it's a numbers game for me, and I still think some of the people are still competing even in this radio station land of sharing the truth, and I think perhaps competing is what's got us in this mess so far. So to all the people who might be listening and associated with other radio stations, I personally think we're going to have to start coming together, as opposed to 500 stations. Maybe we could network a little bit and get something that is a bit more powerful.
Well, that would be good. There does seem to be a lot of competition between different radio stations, different online stations, which is a shame to see. But eventually I think we'll get something coherent. I go on as many shows as I can, so I just try to spread myself out. I don't care. I'll go on anybody's show. I just want to get the word out, so I don't really enter into the competition. I've had lots of offers to join different stations, but I've always noticed a little bit of politics between other stations, and so I just kind of stay where I am.
Yeah, I agree. I do. I agree. We do what we can, and the right people do step forward, because the right people are not interested in money. They're not interested in fame. Yourself, I mean, I know that Max Igan isn't your name, but that's fine. It's what you're comfortable with, because privacy is something you value, and I agree privacy is something you value as well. So I have no problems with that. I wish other people felt that the same way. Really, we've actually paid for an entire global spy grid to watch every move, every type, every text, every email. They're very.
Well, again, it also becomes a cult of personality with a lot of people, and I don't want to do that. I mean, when I do the shows, I want it to be about the message. It's not about me. It doesn't matter who I am. What matters is whether what I'm saying is true, whether it rings true with you, whether it helps you with your life, whether it helps change the paradigm. It's about the message. It's not about me. So, if people are so stressed out at wanting to see me, well, bad luck. It's not about that. No, and I don't want the fame. If I wanted the fame, I could have had that when I was a musician, and I knocked it back then as well. I don't like the idea of fame. I think it's ridiculous, the pedestals that people put other people on. And they're all just people. We're all the same as each other. Mm-hmm. We all have a valid perspective. And why do we need to put people on pedestals? Why do we need to follow anybody? Now, people say, oh, I follow Max Igan. Well, if you follow me, you're not getting the message. I don't want followers. I want leaders. You need to lead yourself. Don't follow anybody else. Lead yourself. Everybody know who and what you are, because I'm no better than anybody else. I'm just Max, and I'm just offering my perspective. So it doesn't matter who I am. And Max is the name that I use. It's the name that I've always used. It's my middle name, and I don't particularly like my first name, and so I've always used the name Max. I have for a good many years. And Igan is my son's middle name, and I do everything I do for my son. I want my son to have a better world. If I didn't have my son, I probably wouldn't speak out as much as I do. That's what got me speaking out in the beginning, was my love for my son. And so that's kind of a dedication to him. And so I kind of did that when I wrote a book. I mean, I wrote a book and I published it online. I didn't think anyone would read it. But it became quite popular. And so that's the name that I used. That was the pen name that I used for the book, Maxwell Igan. Again, because it was a tribute to my son. And so that's how I became known online, and that's who I am.
What's the name of the book? I've not heard this before. What's the name of the book?
It's called Earth's Forbidden Secrets.
Right.
Part one, Searching for the Past. It's on the website, on thecrowhouse.com.
Right, I've missed that. I've missed that.
You'll find a link on the bottom of on the bottom of the homepage or on the projects page, just to a PDF.
Marvellous. I'll have a little look. With you saying that you're doing this for your son, it resonates with me, because I have a 10-year-old daughter, and the light in her eyes and the innocence and the excitement and the enthusiasm of what life may bring is something that, how can you deny that to a child? I mean, the system wants to deny those things to those children, but I don't want to do that. I want her to be proud of me. I mean, whatever I achieve, but I just want her to be proud of me. You say, my dad did what he could. There's no fee, there's no price, there's no charge, there's no fame. I'm not bothered. I'm just doing it because there's nothing else I'd rather be doing, actually.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just, you get to a stage where you look at it and you go, well, look, I'm just speaking my truth, and I'm questioning the job that the public trustees are doing. And if they have a problem with me speaking out, well, hey, come and get me. Let's talk about it. Take me to court. Let's boogie. I'm quite happy to stand there and talk about it. Prove me wrong. Let's boogie.
Didn't an Australian politician actually speak out about the resources belong to the people of Australia?
Well, the Prime Minister said that. She actually said about a month ago. She said that the mining companies don't own the resources, and that the government is holding the country and the resources in trust for the sovereign people of Australia. So she just said she's a trustee. It's a trust agreement. The government's holding the resources in the country in trust for the sovereign people. So you're already sovereign. People go to we've got to go and claim our sovereignty. Well, what makes you think you're not sovereign already? What, birth certificate, all this stuff that they say, where's the valid contract saying that you're not sovereign? What, did they trick you into all this stuff? You didn't even know that you weren't free. So how can you say that any contracts that you have with government are valid? Any Sesta KV trust they've entered you into with the Vatican, any of this stuff, how can you claim that any of this is valid? Because you didn't even know any of it exists. So how can it be valid contracts?
Absolutely.
I'm sovereign. I know who and what I am.
Yeah.
Even under their law, it says in their Bible, God created man and gave man dominion over the earth. That's on page 2. I mean, well, my name's man. I've got dominion over the earth. Man created society, and society created government. Who are these people? What makes them think they can write legislation down and call it law? All it does is replace law with their will. Yeah. Legislation, just stuff they wrote on pieces of paper. It doesn't mean anything. That works for them in their world. That's got nothing to do with me. I'm man, and my relationship with government is a trust agreement. These people are public trustees. Julia Gillard just said they're public trustees. She just said she holds the nation and the resources in trust for the sovereign people. Well, I'm one of the sovereign people, and she holds the resources in the nation in trust for me and for you and for everybody else in this country who chooses to stand in their flesh and be who and what they are. That's the solution. See, that's why you've got to look at it from a perspective of trust. You can't go down any of these rabbit holes and work within legal parameters and petition these people and have riots and protests and do all this stuff. You've got to put it back into trust. put the whole thing back into trust, because that's what's going on here is a breach of trust. All of the hardship that anybody's in any of our countries is a result of the breach of trust that is currently being perpetrated by the governments because the people are not doing anything about it, because they don't know the trust agreement exists. But it is. She just said it is. There you go. I've been telling people this for years, and there we go. The Prime Minister just admitted that she's a trustee. All government officials are trustees. Anybody who works for the government is a public trustee. That's it. We're beneficiaries. We're grantors and beneficiaries. So, the trustees, who are the trustees accountable to? Well, the grantors, the people who grant them the power. That's us. We grant them the power because we're the beneficiaries of the power that we give them. But, we're suffering at the hands of these people. So this is a breach of trust. You know what I'm saying? Of course it's a breach of trust. That's the basis of the whole problem. We just don't see it that way. We're taught not to see it that way. We're taught to view things within legal parameters that these people construct to tie us up in red tape, so that we're never addressing the problem, because we're never looking at it from trust. We're always operating within their legal parameters that they give us. And we're going, okay, I've got to do this, do I? No worries. So we're contracting with them when we're doing it, according to their rules, and we don't have to. We've got to step back and put it in trust. That's the remedy to the whole thing.
I am hearing more and more people say exactly the same thing. We've got to go down the trust route and get it back. We've got to get back what they've stolen from us. And I am, I'm clearly sort of along with that. We're over the hour, Max, and it's been an absolute pleasure to spend company with you. I mean, if anybody hasn't heard you before, and I can't believe that could be true, if you haven't visited thecrowhouse.com, please do so. There is so much information, lots and lots of great links in there. Max's work it's what you can use to share with other people. Closing comments, Max. Well, what are you thinking right now?
Well, trust.
Yeah.
People have got to wake up to what they are, and they've got to realise that is their entire relationship with government. That is the basis of their entire relationship with government. It's a trust agreement. It's a fiduciary trust. It's the same as you employ a mechanic to fix your car. That's a trust agreement. You expect him to do the right thing. We employ these people to run the country. We expect them to do the right thing. And the fact that you're in a state of hardship, and the fact that the earth looks the way it does today, the look at the state of the planet, this clearly shows a breach of trust on behalf of the governments. So we've got to know who and what we are, and we've got to call them on it.
We do, and I hope this interview, along with many others that you do, is shared by those that want to achieve this. We can do it. I mean, it's not a problem. It's not a question that we can't do it. We can do it. We just have to get enough people to want to do it. Yeah, we can.
We just need the power of the community. We need people to know who and what they are, so we can stand up together and make a better world, because we have every opportunity to do so.
Agreed entirely. Mr. Maxwell Igan, thank you for your time today. I hope you'll come back in the future and help us with some more insights that we can use. Thank you very much, Mr. Igan.
My pleasure, Paul.